So we're here talking with Dr. Dominic Cooper today, and he's the CEO of Be Safe Management Solutions. But on top of that, Dom, you're also an author of several books.
Yes, ma'am.
Right? So one is the Strategic Safety Culture Roadmap.
Yes, ma'am.
Right? So if you want anything to know about safety culture, come to Dom and he can have good arguments for you, left, right, and center. And then the other book that you did was a Behavioral Safety, a Framework for Success.
Yes, ma'am.
Right? So I guess when I'm looking at that question, about, sharing what you're most passionate about in your area of expertise, I guess I would kind of want to kind of unearth, why did you choose these areas to write about? Like, what kind of really hit you and said,
Okay, well, a long story short, once upon a time, I left home at 13. I went on the hippie trail. I returned when I was 17, living on the streets. So I joined the army when I was 17. While I was on active service in Belfast, I caught my arm in a cement mixer and got pulled into a cement mixer, which broke my arm, nearly ripped it off. And if it hadn't been for the great doctors at Musgrave Park, I would probably have lost my arm. So I had this accident and I got casevaced and sent back to London, and I carried on. Then I left the military. And then I became a scaffolder by trade. I was a scaffolder. And I ended up working on a nuclear power station, construction of this nuclear power station. And due to horrible circumstances and an awful lot of rain, we couldn't work for 3 or 4 hours. And then when the rain stopped, we were urged to work quickly and get to our work site quickly and get back on with the work. And Ted fell off the scaffold and landed in steel reinforcing bars. And it took 45 scaffolders from lots of different companies to come together to tunnel our way through the scaffolding in the hot cell to reach him, to try and save him. And when we got there, he was dead. So that had quite a bit of thinking. I did a degree in psychology. I got in because I was a mature student, even though I didn't have any qualifications for school. So they let me in. And I got a degree in psychology, just an average 2.2. And then I went from there to University of Hull, and I did a master's degree inside 1 year. So I got my master's degree in industrial psychology. And so the first degree was an honours degree in psychology, then industrial psychology degree. And then I went straight from there. I applied for lots of different posts to do a PhD because I was on a roll. And the PhD, there was a British HSE funded study looking at the application of psychology to construction safety. And that was where I then implemented or helped to implement the behavioral safety approach to construction. So we were learning. No one had ever done it in Britain. It was around in America. So we're talking 1989 when I began this project at UMIST, University of Manchester Institute of Science and Technology. And we proved the concept, and we did improve safety on various sites. And we did training. We did various combinations of training, feedback, and goal setting, but using the so it was cognitive psychology and behavioral psychology melded together. Okay, so it was a joining up of two tribes, as it were. Like we got tribes in safety, there's tribes in psychology. So we adopted both approaches, and we had fantastic success. And then from there on in, it was someone rang the university and says, we run a factory and we've had an awful lot of incidents. Can you come down and make that work here? Because we were doing papers at conferences and that. So we went down there, and cellophane plant, we reduced the injury rate by 82% in 9 months. So using the same techniques. But we learned that, like you talk about group dynamics, group-based behavior-based safety is the most powerful, with participative goal setting. So and feedback, goal setting and feedback. When we added training, it was very interesting. training seemed to negate the effects of behavior-based safety. It was really weird. So what we did was once a week, we would give all the guys in the different work groups feedback about their own performance, which
Okay.
they had
Yeah.
never, ever had.
Yeah.
That gave them a chance to adjust. So, for example, on one of the construction sites, it was really interesting for me because being a scaffolder by trade, which I am, I'm an advanced scaffolder by trade, we went on one of the sites and one of the things we were monitoring was scaffolding. And we put up some data to show that the scaffolding, the quality of the scaffolding had deteriorated and it was edging towards being really unsafe. Do you know they sent 40 scaffolders onto that site over the weekend to get every piece of scaffolding up to 100% safe for free?
For free. Yeah.
For free.
And so that was the feedback and goal methodology,
Goal setting,
right?
yeah, feedback and goal setting.
And so if somebody who's listening to this is like, well, that's interesting. How can I also do the feedback and goal methodology? What would you recommend to them to be looking at?
Very simple. You go to the work guys and you say to the guys, okay, guys, what's hurting you in here? What is the common thing that's causing you accidents? So 20% of the behaviors the guys do is causing 80% of all the problems, 80-20 thing. Okay. Get the guys to determine what they are. Go back through the records if you must, which we've done. And you say, okay, this one's this, and you get piles like this, you know, like little piles and big piles. There's the big pile. Let's concentrate on that one. Okay, guys, you write the checklist so they're positive. Not the guys must do this, but the guys are doing this. The assumptions we were talking about earlier, we assume everyone's working safely. Okay, so they come up with a checklist. So it takes a couple of weeks to do. Then you train the observers. Well, this is how you observe. What are you going to do if two of you go out and you're looking left, you're looking right, and you come back with different numbers? How are you going to explain that? Yeah. So we get some consistency in this observation process. And you're also teaching the guys how to interact with the other guys. But we didn't have everyone trained as observers. We had one bloke in the work group trained as an observer. So he would observe for 6 months. 6 months later, they switch out the checklist and the observer, and they rotate them amongst the work group. So if you've got 6 people in a work group, you're looking at 3 years before it comes back round to do more observations. So it's a much more structured, guided way of doing things, if you like. For the first couple of weeks, you just monitor, see where you are. You've got a baseline, a starting point. And then the next week, so that you ask the guys, well, your overall score, let's say, for example, we're 50% safe. You're working 50% safely over this baseline period. Well done. How can we get better? And they say, well, we could do this, we could do that. So, okay, well, how much better do you think you can be in the next 6 months? Oh, I reckon we can improve by 25%, 50%, whatever. Okay, let's set a target. And then each and every week you say to them, well, here's the results of the observations. So you work in all of this stuff about employee engagement and participation. It's all embedded in that process.
But I'm looking at our time, and I do know that we're coming close to the end. But before we go, what I did want to ask you, Dom, is that you are going to be speaking at the 1% Safer Live and Direct conference coming up in April the 24th to the 28th. It's online. So can you give us a bit of a teaser? What are you going to be talking about?
Why are we losing the war on SIPs? So we've got something like anywhere between 2.3 million and 2.78 million or 2.8 million deaths per year around the world at work. We have those come from something like 340 million accidents. Okay, so put that down in, if you like, make it daily. Yeah, we've got roughly 7,600 deaths per day. Okay, that's crazy, and the figures are rising. And that's from 931,500 accidents per day around the globe, per day. That's appalling. So why is it we as a profession are not beating this enemy? Why is it that the figures are ticking up over the last 10 years or so? Why? Well, what have we got? We've got the safety profession has been focused on mental health and well-being for the last 9 or 10 years. So the focus has shifted off of controlling workplace accidents. So we've got the safety professionals' qualifications are being dumbed down. It's much easier to become a qualified safety professional these days than it ever was. Why? Because the safety bodies, and I'm being inclusive of all of them, they want the revenue. Let's get more members, let's get more money. But the quality is disappearing with it, put it that way. Okay, not everyone, but there's a tendency everything's being dumbed down. But then clearly safety profession's not focused on the right strategies, because if it was, these incidents would be disappearing. So last year I was asked by a learning organization to do a talk on what works and what doesn't in safety. And this is what I want to talk about for the 1% safer. What works in safety and what doesn't? And it's evidence-based, it's not opinion-based, it's evidence-based. And I can direct people to the papers and the research, okay? What works, what doesn't? And there is no sacred cows when it comes to saving a life, okay? If it works, we keep it. If it doesn't work, we get rid of it. Otherwise, we're spinning wheels and wasting our time. So the talk I want to talk about is, what are we spinning our wheels on, and where have we got traction? How are we going to save these lives? How are we going to stop 7,600 people a day dying? And just let me remind everybody, death is permanent. The families of those people over the next 10 years, their income is going to reduce by approximately 15%, which means the children that are left behind is another generation or two in poverty, because we as a profession cannot get our act together.
And in addition on that, right, is when you do have an accident, that's lifelong.
Well, I don't disagree with that. My brother had his jaw shattered when a weld gave way on a tipper truck and the safety bar flipped up and hit him under the jaw. It shattered his jaw. It took him 5 years to rebuild it. And when he did try and go back to work, he cannot go around the back of a truck. So I know exactly what you're talking about. And I mean, people say to me, why are you passionate about safety? And I look at my family and I just see the carnage and the damage that's been done. I see my friends that have died when I was scaffolding. I just, you know, this is all real.
So we've been talking to Dominic Cooper. So thank you, Dom, for coming and joining us. I think it's going to be a very interesting session that you're going to hold at the 1% Safer live and direct conference happening April the 24th to the 28th. And that's going to be online. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Tamara. Thank you very much.